You'll have to excuse my voice. I have been sick for a while. And yeah, my hair is dark again. It's kind of similar to my actual color, hair color. Not quite. I just want to grow out my natural hair, and I can't wait to go gray. I really am excited to become gray. On my TikTok, I have been talking more about the more traditional clothing. And this is something I wanted to talk about for a while, because I am a mix of things. Like a lot of people assume I'm Russian, but I'm not. There's very little Russian in me, actually. I do speak Russian, but that has to do with the fact that I was born in the Soviet Union. But so I'm part Kazakh and part a lot of things. You can go watch my TikToks to learn more if you're curious. But I have been trying to embrace wearing more of the traditional clothes, even though we don't really have true traditional clothes here, because most of the things that we have nowadays are just interpretations of what people used to wear. And of course, during the Soviet time, there were a lot of modifications made to a lot of the local wear, because a lot of the local people, they were poor, so they couldn't afford like beautiful fabrics and prints, and they would just, you know, hold on to whatever fabric they had, and they would just make whatever was the most durable. Yes, they would use fur and leather, because that was available to them, because they were herdsmen, mostly nomadic herdsmen. So nowadays, of course, we have a lot of modern iterations of what we would wear in the past, in the steppes, in the mountains to survive, and this kind of things. This is an Uzbek chapan, by the way, or chapan. There are different pronunciations depending on the region, and it is considered to be Russification if you say it with a ch. So chapan is more of like a Russian version. But a lot of the Kazakh people also say chapan, so I think both words are appropriate in this case. And you have seen me in some other of these kind of clothes. Maybe I'll insert some pictures. I don't know if I have any good pictures of any of those. So these are more modern iterations of, and of course, very like fashionable type of iterations. They do preserve some of the more traditional aspects. For example, like the inside, it's kind of like a quilted material. So it's pretty warm, it's pretty durable. This is a little jacket I have that was made in Uzbekistan. In the prints, you can see they're a little bit more Persian inspired, and that would be true for Uzbek and Tajik cultures, especially Tajiks, because Tajik people were very much influenced by the Persians. They spoke Farsi, as far as I know, and their own language is very much influenced by Persian language. Uzbek people, on the other hand, they have, as far as I remember, they are the most ancient civilization in Asia, and they have been around for a long, long time. So they kind of like mixed and mingled with a lot of the peoples that would come and go. But they are still, their language, I think, is from the Turkic family. So they're closer to like Kazakh language and Kyrgyz language and other Turkic languages. But Uzbeks have more vibrancy in their fashion, in their attire. So this one was made in Uzbekistan, and I do own a few more of these pieces that were made in Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan. We have them made locally as well, but they're so much more expensive, because a lot of the modern young designers, they want to make those big bucks. So they just make the traditional looking attire, and they're like, fashion, pay me. And I'm poor, so I can't really afford, you know, those very, very expensive local chapans. So I just get them from my neighbors who price their pieces in a little bit more of an affordable fashion, so people like me can afford it. But yeah, I have really been enjoying wearing those pieces, especially in wintertime, because a lot of those are geared towards colder weather. And there is this kind of a running joke, which is partially based on reality, that Uzbek people and Tajik people, they would never like dress lightly. They would always put on layers, and, you know, they would wear chapans in summertime as well, because they would usually use like natural fibers like linen or cotton or silk if it was available, and it would kind of keep the temperature, like whatever the temperature is of your body, it would kind of be close to that. It would not let you overheat, and it would be kind of breathable still because it's a natural fiber. And also it was kind of a custom for them to drink hot tea during summer months, again, just to kind of stay in balance balance with the weather outside because it's hot outside. So you should kind of keep the inside of your body warm as well to kind of vibe with the weather. I don't know. I don't know how exactly they justified it, but it kind of makes sense. You're going to sweat in summer months anyway, but if you're wearing clothes like this, you're definitely not getting a sunburn because the sun's not going to be able to penetrate through all that fabric. And if you're comfortable this way, why not, right? So here in Kazakhstan, we kind of do have a little bit of this as well, where you will see like grandmas and grandpas walking in chapans in summertime, even because that's just something they're used to doing and it's comfortable for them. They don't get too hot. In winter too, you will see older people walking around wearing a lot of the more colorful, more beautiful traditional wear, and it's becoming more mainstream for people of all ages to wear it. Unfortunately, it also kind of coincides with nationalism, which I am not a part of. I am here to celebrate all cultures, and I am an internationalist. It's kind of a must for me because I'm a communist, but also because I am multicultural myself. I cannot claim to be any nationality or ethnicity whatsoever. And I personally think that just like borders, just like states, nationalities and ethnicities, they're all kind of blurry. And in the new world, if we live to see it, this is all going to be, personal matters that are managed within, family units, within communities. And it wouldn't be a point of separation. It would be a point of coming together. This is what I enjoy about, embracing traditional wear and whatnot, is the fact that we can celebrate these cultures, not look at the things that divide us, but look at the things that bring us together, like clothes. Everybody needs clothes and anybody can enjoy beautiful clothes, especially if you are able to do it mindfully. Like me in the region, I have access to all of these beautiful pieces of clothing that people make locally. They're not getting the best wages, unfortunately, because they live in capitalist states. So I'm not going to believe the lies that something is sourced ethically, because nothing is sourced ethically under capitalism. But sometimes you do get to talk to the people who are a part of this craft. Yes, they are not making a lot of money, but they love doing that. And in the end, it is the clothing that you are going to wear and appreciate, hopefully. So I am all for celebrating multiculturalism in this type of manner, just in forms of appreciation and learning about the cultures. And I personally am learning more and more about, a lot of the different cultures that resided in the Soviet Union, as I am studying more of the history of the Soviet Union, as I'm hearing more from the people, who I'm surrounded by in my community. And I am very appreciative and I'm very grateful that the Soviet Union helped preserve a lot of these cultures. This is a very common myth, by the way, that the Soviet Union had those Russification programs where local cultures would not be encouraged and would be punished and discouraged, and people would not be allowed to speak their language. This is colonizers and imperialists projecting onto USSR. This is what they would have done. This is what the Western powers did, and this is what they expected the Soviets to do as well. But this didn't happen. And you can study the history, you can look at the archives, and you can look at what is still left of all of the native cultures. Yes, they have changed, but surprise, surprise, cultures change when they come in contact with other cultures. And here in this region, we have been influenced by a lot of the various things throughout history, like the Turkic Mongol invasion was a big thing. The Islamization of the region was a big thing. We've always had ties with China. We were a part of the Great Silk Road. So all of these things influenced us before. And being in contact with Russia was also a thing that predated the Soviets. And then during the Soviet time, there were funds that were dedicated to the cultural development of each and every region. There would be culture centers built. There would be lots of people who would be paid to study the local languages, study the local cultures. We called them ethnographers, I think. Nowadays, I think they're all called anthropologists. But there would be a lot of people who were funded by the government to preserve the culture and to help the culture continue to grow and evolve. The hope was that the cultures eventually are going to kind of melt together and become this one giant culture, international culture of the Soviet Union. That was the goal, the hope, and the dream, that we are going to kind of overcome all of the possible boundaries that divided us. And then we would all have this giant, great, wonderful, like synthesis of all the local cultures. It didn't quite happen, but partially it did, because we had so many things mixing. And sometimes sometimes it's very hard to tell what is Kyrgyz and what is Kazakh and what is Uzbek even and what is Tajik, even though, of course, Uzbek and Tajik people are very, very distinct. But Kazakh people and Kyrgyz people, some people are going to get really angry when I say this, but, you know, Kazakh people used to be called Kyrgyz people, and not just by the Russians. When they were asked what they were, like what ethnic background they had, they would name their tribal name, just kind of like the native people in the United States did on the Turtle Island before it became the United States. Like, they would have their own like tribal names and tribal groups. They didn't have like a common name for everyone, so they were called Kyrgyz, and they didn't care. And then later those divisions were created more for the ease, and the local people didn't really mind. Some people, of course, minded. Nationalists always wanted to create, you know, separation lines between each other. They were like, no, we are better than those other people who are living locally as well, which continues to happen still. And a lot of the Kazakh people do have, you know, their like tribal names and like their group and community names. I don't know how to translate them. Like, I know from my father's side as well, I know like up to 5 generations who the people were and which like part of Kazakhstan we were originally from, etc. I know some of these things, and I can share them maybe later if you're interested. But the Soviet Union didn't try to destroy all of this diversity. They didn't say like, oh, you guys are just Kazakhs, that's it. The Soviets tried their best to study this and record this. And this is how we have written history of it, actually. Before, it was oral history, but the Soviet Union did try their best, of course, not without fail, to help preserve the cultures and help develop them to the best of their ability. And a lot of the things got kind of changed, like traditional things would kind of mush together in the region and become one. And again, this is where you get a lot of the designs, actually the Kazakh designs, they have a more recent history than some people think. We do have some anthropological sites where we can look at the very ancient like cave paintings and whatnot. I can insert some pictures of some of the places I personally visited. But they're old. They predate a lot of these civilizations and a lot of these tribal peoples that I am kind of descendant from. I really hate this whole discourse of the people trying to play white savior, coming and being like, oh yeah, you just don't understand how bad the Soviet Union affected the local people. I'm like, I am part of these people. I was born here. I've lived here all my life. My ancestors were born in these lands and lived here all their life. Let me decide, okay? Let me decide whether these lands were colonized or not. Let the people who live here locally decide. And also study the history. Look at the impact. Look at what happened to the people who were supposedly denied their cultures. How come the languages are still around? How come so many people still speak the languages? And I even have personal history, my family history. My grandmother was a teacher, and she came from a village where everybody spoke Kazakh, but her mother, my great-grandmother, she wanted my grandmother to have a better life. So she sent her to the city from the village, and she went to study Russian. And she became a Russian teacher to the Kazakh-speaking individuals. So because we did have Kazakh schools, and the quality of education there kept rising as the productive forces rose. So the quality of education rose for all the multicultural schools. So we would have Kazakh-speaking schools here, Kyrgyz-speaking schools in Kyrgyzstan, Uzbek-speaking schools in Uzbekistan, etc., etc., and they would offer Russian-speaking schools as well. And they did what they could. They did their best not to discriminate, but of course there were differences and disparities. We cannot deny that the Russian education would usually be superior to the local language education, mostly because it was hard to train people and it was hard to translate everything. Like, there is a vast amount of literature, for example, you can read in Russian. And in order to translate it all in all the local languages, that's a lot of labor. And they tried their best to do that. There were a lot of works that were translated from not only Russian, but all the other languages as well into Kazakh. And we still have a lot of this remaining. And in the years of independence, efforts also have been made to translate things. How good they are, I'm not the judge. From what I'm hearing, it's not amazing, like it's fine, it's better than nothing, but it appears like their incentives are different, of course. But ultimately, I'm here for internationalism, I'm here for the solidarity of all peoples, and I want to see the fall of empire, and I want to see people of all kinds rise and seize the means of production and return their power and become the driving force of humanity. And I hope that you are going to do the same. You're going to join forces with me and people who are like-minded. And I hope that you have a great day today, and I'll talk to you sometime later.